All right, let's rock and roll. So I'm actually up the morning after this live webinar, re-recording it because we had a little bit of a slide moving along glitch last night. So I just wanted to re-record it and be as simple as possible. Simplicity is definitely my motto. It saves a lot of time and energy in our lives. So this webinar is about scheduling and planning for a healthy family lifestyle. I paused there on webinar because I kind of feel like it's a little bit more like a workshop. I'm not sure I love the word webinar, but here we go. So, always how to get the most out of anything when you're trying to grow and learn is just to zero in on one thing. It's really hard for our minds to multitask, which, funny enough, is what a lot of this is going to be about today. So, if you're really wanting to take all this in, just turn off the stuff around you, silence your phone, get the kiddos taken care of, even if that means, having them play by your side, but really be in a position where you can sit down and tune in. And you're listening to the recording, so most likely you can press pause if you need to, which will help too. So, this workshop is perfect for you if life just feels too busy sometimes. Like all those things that we do as a busy mom are just adding up, and you're not quite sure how you got to this point. And a lot of times people say, like, I don't know how you do it because you have three kids, or how did you make it this far because your kids are getting older? Because I find a lot of times when our kids are younger, it's like, we just go, go, go. We think we need to give them so much. So I'm hoping that this helps us to clarify some of that and help clear some time in your schedule. Because one of the things that happens as we get too busy is we get too busy for our own health and even for our family's health, and definitely too busy to get all those meals on the table every week in the way that maybe we want to since you're showing up here. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover the most important thing that you need to do consistently to plan for healthy meals. It's going to be a little different than you think, but it's fun. We are going to cover 9 meal/life planning hacks. And now that I'm saying that out loud, I think to simplify, I made it down to 7. So we are going to cover 7 meal and life planning hacks. And I put life in parentheses because I feel like as we simplify our meals as busy parents, we really are simplifying our life. So, the exact morning rituals that keep me calm and make me healthy and eating effortlessly the really good choices for me and my kids. That was a tongue twister. Um, and I have to say, I am actually officially recording this after going through a little bit of my morning ritual, so I will share that with you at the end. So, in case you don't know me yet, I just wanted to give you a little background. So, basically, I have 3 kids who are now 8, 11, and 13, and they all just changed ages. So, that still, I have to rack my brain to remember that really they've gotten that big. It's crazy. But about 7 years ago, when my youngest was 1, I found myself 60 pounds heavier than I had ever been. And I was miserable even though it looked pretty good and normal on the outside. I mean, I had these 3 kids. That was my dream. I had an amazing husband who I had actually met in high school, which was also my dream. We had bought an apartment. I owned a graphic design company, and I had set it up so I would walk to work every morning, and I was near my kids as they were nursing and all that stuff. So I always felt like I could really balance those two things. But it had just gotten to an all point, like, I don't know. It was just crazy. There was this moment where I was like, what is going on? Like, I can't juggle all this any longer. And so I took on that one thing I could see, which was the food I was consuming and my weight. So I changed my food kind of overnight, and I do a lot of trainings on the food. This one is not going to be on that, but we all know that more veggies, less gluten and dairy. That was one of the things actually I decided to ditch. The two of them was gluten and dairy, but really adding in veggies, drinking more water. There's lots of little strategies I can give you along the way. But what I didn't realize is that when I changed my food, that the weight would melt off, but there was all these other things on the other side. So I had always taken medicine for my seasonal allergies, like daily. And if I was getting annoyed at night, I'd take Benadryl and it would help me sleep. So I was always taking these medicines and I just thought it was normal. I took medicine to get my period. I thought that was normal. And within a week of changing my food, I never had to take either of those medicines again. Nothing for allergies, and I never had to take medicine, hormone medicine again, which I think actually was part of the reason I was feeling so crappy was it was just messing with my head and my moods. My energy went off the charts, and the day before I changed my diet, one of my sort of tipping points was that I had consumed 7 cups of coffee by 2:30 and I was exhausted. And I just remember looking at my desk and being like, how did those get there? And how did that happen? How did I even walk out of the office that much? And how am I so freaking tired and it's only 2? I had always gotten chronic ear infections yearly, so this was one I got to look back on a little bit later. But I I took antibiotics after getting them, and I didn't have not had an ear infection since. So in 7.5 years, my skin cleared up hugely. I had always had sort of eczema type rash type stuff. I have sort of fair skin, so it showed up bumps that cleared up. And one of the biggest impacts that really bought me a lot of time was at that point with 3 kids. As you know, with kids, they bring a lot of stuff home, especially in their younger years. And so I would always catch it. And so it was like one child would get sick, mama would get sick. Then the next kid would get sick, then mama would get sick. And it just felt like I was always sick because I was always caring for kids. So I have to say that over the past 7 years, we've changed our um, we've changed how we take care of ourselves as a family. At the beginning, it was just about me. We've changed as a family enough that we do actually get sick a lot less. The kids do, but when they do, I don't. So I haven't been sick in a really long time. So that's a really big one because I find that as when mom gets sick, a lot of systems break down. Just because we're holding a lot together. And so it's like, then the meals don't get made for that week, and then you get out of sync, and then you have to catch up on work, and it's hard. It's hard to get back after being sick. So with all this, I just became obsessed first with food, and how I could do this, how I could. So for myself, I started off just eating the same thing every day for 3 months to kickstart all this off. So eventually I just dove into food to figure out how to make more variety. And then I got obsessed with how to get my kids to eat more variety. And that was both about the food, but also a lot about parenting and a lot about scheduling and how to fit it in. So, what we're going to move and talk most about today is the scheduling, though it's always mapping back, obviously, to the food. But what I found over the years of running Plan Simple Meals is that I do attract a lot of people who come for recipes and stuff, but have already they don't need my food piece when I teach that course, and but they're here because not everything's quite right. So maybe you fit into that category that you kind of have an idea of what you need to do to be healthy, but we're all in the same boat as busy parents. I very much include myself here. In fact, most of the things I'm sharing with you today, I share with you because I need them and I do them too. So I feel like there's this sort of perfect equation, perfect marriage of needing to really shift our mindset to make a lot of these healthy habits stick, plus planning, plus the food. So we're not going to talk too much about the food today, although I always tend to give a couple of food examples. It's mostly going to be about the planning. But before we dive into the planning, the mindset is the thing that I think really needs to shift first before planning can be sustainable. Or it needs to shift as we're planning to make the planning sustainable. And before we get into all this, I just want to tell you that you are in the perfect place. So one of the things that happened last night as I did this live is a lot of people just said that they were overwhelmed, that there was a lot of information. And I have to say, I'm queen of simplifying. So the last thing that I want to do is overwhelm anybody. But my whole point of my existence is to simplify food and calendars and planning and all this stuff that comes with being a busy mom so that we can really show up and be the parents and the sisters and the daughters and the friends and the people that we really want to be in this world. And I believe that we can create this time that we feel like we're lacking, but it's a process. It is a practice. It's not an overnight success story. And I know that a lot of times we crave that because it's all over the place in media, but I really don't believe that a lot of those solutions are sustainable. So just know that wherever you are today, you're in the place that you're meant to be. And if there's something that feels like too much, go with that gut, and there's going to be some nuggets you get out of this. And my goal is that you really get like 3 nuggets out of this that you can take with you and implement in your life, and make a difference. So, as I said, I wanted to start with intention. And here's the thing: food is something that we think about in the present tense. Like a lot of times we're forced with decisions. What's for dinner? Do I want to eat that cookie on the table right now? I'm hungry. I need to eat. Oh, shoot, what am I going to eat? So a lot of our food choices are in the present moment, but we really need intention and to be able to move beyond that present moment, because I'm actually going to skip to point 2 first, but we're actually eating for our future self. So I think it was Michael Pollan who wrote that what we eat today is making who we are 7 years from now. So our bodies are constantly like refreshing and rebuilding. Like that's the beautiful thing about being human, is it's very resilient. But we are eating for our body 7 years from now. So just think of that. And it's not, food isn't about that one choice, that one cookie. It's about the consistent choices we make on a daily basis. So that is, it's very true that when your mind says that one cookie isn't going to kill me, but what happens to us is we repeat that over and over again, because we don't have the intention behind it to really know that we're having that one cookie, and then that sugar does add up to our future self. Does that make sense? But the cool thing is that it's not only the bad things that add up, it's the good things that add up. And that's really what this is about, is how to fit in those little good things that do add up and make us a different person in 7 years than we would have been if we didn't think about it today. So back to point 1, one of the things that I really find helps in this idea of having intention and setting an intention for your future that really carries you forward is to start building your belief. And the only way you can do that is just by, you know, getting yourself outside of popular culture and media, because we got into the position we are today because we built our beliefs on ads. So, we largely drink milk because of advertising and the media. And what happens is that then those stories go into our families and then they become like family stories. And that's even more believable than an ad on a TV or in a newspaper, right? So we need to be building our beliefs with the latest research and, you know, new thoughts. And so a great way to do that is by, reading and watching movies. So movies is one of my favorite things because as busy parents, who has time um, to always be reading? But I do love anything by Michael Pollan if you're interested in reading. He also actually has a Netflix series right now that's related to his book, so that might be a good thing to check out. The China Study is an absolutely fabulous book if you're a research based person and really want to know the facts. And there's a great book actually called Water, which is just on that simple strategy of drinking water and all the health implications that that can have on us. And all those are found on Amazon. But then another practice that I find found really cool is, in that moment when you're going to go watch a show or go watch sports, and sometimes those things are meaningful and you really want to go do them. But one of the things that's helped me get a lot of time for doing the things I want to do is actually mostly to stop doing those things. But when I do them, to really use them to build my belief. So here's a few movies that I think are really good for building belief: Food Inc., Forks Over Knives, Super Size Me, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, Hungry for Change, Food Matters, Fed Up. Fed Up is one actually that I also showed my kids as they got older. That was a good one for kids. Um, GMO OMG is a newer one. Cowspiracy is about meat. Vegucated is another one. So see, there's a lot of ones. King corn. So those are just a few of them, and if you Google it, you'll find, I think, even more. So just look those up, um, and maybe once a week, that's what you do. You watch a documentary, and you start to understand, like, what it is that you need to be eating as you're experimenting and really understanding what you're putting in your body and what you're putting around you, because that makes making choices so much easier. All right, I didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole so long. So what happens is you're building your belief and you're doing it for your future self, then you can let that intention pull you forward instead of willpower. Because here's the deal. Willpower is nasty. Willpower is hard, and we don't want this to be hard. We want this to be easy, okay? Or at least simple. I'm not going to say it's always easy, but it can be simple, and it's simpler if you're not letting your willpower be in charge. So now I want to go into 7 planning hacks that I just hope will serve you. It's a lot, which is what I found as I first did the 9 last night. So I took out 2 that I felt were really, I had to rush through to make this an hour presentation. And I'm going to try to go through them clearly, but I just want to explain to you that just taking one of these is a big step forward, and that planning is important, and we need to plan. And corporations have known this forever. Like, they have plans. There's a plan for, if a customer is angry, what to do. Starbucks is pretty phenomenal of training their employees on their plan. And employees actually have to learn what to do in about 14 different scenarios. And they have to be able to write it out for themselves. So planning is big. And, schools have known this, teachers have known this. And here we are in charge of our children, and this is our legacy to them. Our legacy is their health and well-being, and maybe money practices I would add into that. Like, those are the things, like how to take care of yourself, what to eat, how to take care of money, how to take care of your space. Like, these are the things as parents that we're charged with passing on to our kids that are not being taught to them anywhere else. And I would argue that they're equally, if not more important than a lot of the things that we learn in school, because they're the things that help us to keep learning later in life and help us, to really show up later in life. Yet we don't always have a plan. We sort of, you know, wing our way through it, and it makes it harder. And it makes it not as easy to pass on to them. It just makes it more work, and it doesn't need to be so much work. So that's why we create a plan, and it does take some upfront time to create a plan. Just like it takes time to create a plan you make at work, or a teacher to create a plan for your for your kids to learn every year, or if you homeschool, maybe you make a lesson plan, or some like a plan. And a plan doesn't have to be detailed. It just has to, have a little bit of structure to it. But so that's why we plan, because everybody else does, and we have this important job. So why wouldn't we do it for this important job? So the most important thing out of any of this, even actually if you don't take any of the strategies that we go over today, writing it down is the most important thing you can do. So a plan does not have to be complex. A plan can just simply be right now me saying that for dinner we're going to have rice bowls, and writing that down right now so that for the rest of the 10 hours between now and dinner, I don't have to think about that. It's done. It's on paper. It's out of my head. Whereas when I don't write it down, there are moments all day long. We have a lot of thoughts. I forget what the number is, but it's many thousands of thoughts a day. And writing it down helps us to be able to make those thoughts more about what we want them to be and less about our mind wandering about what's for dinner. How am I going to get that done? Do I need to go to the grocery? Because we've written it down in the morning, and that has already put a plan in motion just by writing it down. Does that make sense? So, as I go through these hacks, you're going to see that I'm going to ask you to write almost everything down. But the hacks are kind of you know, on a specific topic, but the real key in all of them is to write it down. All right? So you could just stop now. Just kidding. Okay. So, planning hack number one is, what do you cook? What do you know how to cook? I want you just to write a list. So, a lot of times I hear people say, I don't know how to make anything and I'm bored, or, um, I just don't know how to cook. So you may not. I did not know how to cook 7 years ago. I can tell you that right now. But there were certain things that I could have done or could have pushed myself to do, or certain recipes I was more comfortable with because I had seen my mom make those or my husband make those. Um, so write a list of everything you can make, even things that you're not making from scratch. Just what are those meals that you can pull together easily? Write them all down, even if it means that you go get salad from the salad bar at Whole Foods and the salmon from, you know, the the whatever you call it, the prepared food section. Put that down as a meal you can put together and make, even if you're just warming it up. Put everything down. If you're a seasoned cook, don't put down those things because you already have ideas. But if you're feeling like you don't have ideas, put all those things that you're pulling together because you're a mom and you are pulling together something. And then put a heart next to the things that you enjoy making, that are joyful for you to pull together, or even joyful for you to eat. That's another important thing. Oh, and it's funny, I had this typo last night and I meant to correct it and I didn't. But the second thing is, you're going to put a star not next to the things that you love, because you've already done that with your heart. You're going to put a star next to the thing that your kids love. So that your kids eat and it's like never complaining. Put a star next to those things just so you can remember them. And then I want you to go through and circle or underline the things that you really want to upgrade. So the things that maybe it's that salmon meal that you go get from Whole Foods, maybe you want to learn how to cook it. Or maybe you're always doing boxed macaroni and cheese, but you want to get out of that and there's a way to upgrade it. So over time, um, you can figure out that through cookbooks. If you are ever part of one of my programs, that's what I'm always doing. I love, this is one of my favorite things, is to help people figure out how to upgrade current meals. So let's say, for example, that you have um, that you always are making boxed macaroni and cheese because your kids love it. One way that you could upgrade it is you could figure out how to make that from scratch. There's tons of recipes online for that. Another thing that you could do is you could figure out how to make it gluten free or dairy free, which both exists online as well. Or, better yet, even if you just started with the boxed one, you could figure out how to integrate veggies. So, chopped spinach virtually disappears into pasta or something cooked. Broccoli can be diced and taste really good. So, how can you upgrade it? Maybe it's that eventually you're moving away from the cheese and they're getting a different kind of topping on pasta. But there's this whole process of upgrading. And by upgrading, we just mean that we're adding more fruits and veggies and taking out any of the processed stuff that we don't need. Does that make sense? So it can be gradual. And this is where I'm saying it's a process. So breathe into that. Let that be okay. There's no wrong way to do this. And our kids are learning from us upgrading. They're learning, they're understanding that this is important to us. So it's almost as important for them to see us upgrade as for us to be perfect already. So, planning hack number two is, how busy are you? Are you too busy to even fit in making more food, learning to make something from scratch? Is your calendar filled? So, very often, especially when I'm having live events, actually, I'll hear from people, I can't come because I don't even know how it got this way actually, but I'm going to the symphony with my 3-year-old, or we're on soccer game number 3 of this weekend. I hear this all the time. So if you're in this predicament, don't feel bad, especially if you have, and actually, those two examples I just gave were from two friends who are like, how do you do it with 3 children? Because I only have one and it gets this busy. And so if you do have multiple kids and you're in this predicament, it's probably even crazier. I have one friend whose child has 3 kids who all play in 3 soccer leagues. So imagine how much soccer that is. And that does pull us away from our busyness. So step one in that was that intention part and really getting clear on what your intentions are, which we're not going to go in today. But step two is just to fill in your calendar. So there's this great personal development teaching from a long time ago, and I forget who originally did this, but I'm just going to share it with you and you can visualize it in your head. But this man has a pile of sand and a pile of small pebbles and a pile of big rocks, and he puts the sand into this glass container and it fills about 3/4 of the way up. And then he puts the pebbles in and it's almost to the top. And so there's no longer room for the big rocks. And let's say the big rocks represent those things that you really want to do. So you really want to eat well. You really want to have time, quality time with your kids. You really want to be able to take care of yourself. Like, so whatever those things are, those important things, the things that really matter, those are the big rocks. So they don't fit anymore. And those pebbles in the sand, like the pebbles are the things that maybe we have to do, like the tasks that have to happen to make the big things happen. Like we have to go grocery shopping to eat well, or, we have to bring our kids to school, or maybe we homeschool, but there's something around school. All those little things are the pebbles. And then the sand is all those things that we just do. We don't really even think about. And, you know, we may or may not have time for them, but we have to figure that out. But here's the thing, if you take that same glass jar and you put the big rocks in first, and then you put the pebbles, and then you fill it with sand, you can almost fill everything. So there's like a little bit of sand you have to take off, but you can almost fill the whole thing. So if you use that as a metaphor for your calendar, I actually believe in blocking out your whole calendar, like blocking out every waking hour, not so that you're busier, but so that you make time to not be busy. So this is what planning hack number 2 is fill your calendar and make sure that you're blocking out downtime, both for yourself and for your kids. Like, this is one of the most important things we can give our kids is time to be bored, which I could do an entire class on, but for right now, just trust me. Actually, a great book if you want some reading on that is Simplicity Parenting by Kim John Payne. I'll leave it at that. Block out your meal planning time. So block out, I love doing that on Friday for an hour, but block that out on the calendar. Block out, meal prep and shopping. Like, figure out when that needs to happen. You might not get this right the first time you try, but, block out what you think it'll take and try it for a week and see if that gives you a little bit of, um, extra time. And if it's not quite at the right times and you find yourself like backing yourself out of it, then the next week shift things around. And I don't even know if I said, I didn't write down shopping time, so I don't know if I said shopping time, but shopping time could be part of this too. And then as things come in your calendar, like so and so wants a call for work, or your child wants a play date, or everybody wants to go skating. Yes, those things are great, but they're great if they're not at the expense of taking care of yourself. So, and your family. So look at your calendar and then add those things in after. Does that make sense? So start here, and then you'll be sure to fit them in. And always, 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 again, I'm going to reiterate this with every step, write it down, because this is not something to be held in your head. That will totally stress you out. Okay, planning hack number 3 is this notion of doable changes, which, if you are part of this world, you probably got my world, you probably got this earlier this week in a form that you could download. So, rebuild your days one thing at a time. don't worry about doing it all. So even tonight or today or whenever you're watching this, I'm giving you a bunch of different um, strategies, right? I'm giving you a bunch of different things, but I wouldn't want you to do all of these today because that will not be sustainable. So I gave you a list of 101 different changes, and some of these are on it and some of these aren't, so you can just take good notes. But what you want to do is I want you to pick just one thing to work on. And believe me, when you really work on that one thing, you're not going to leave everything else by the wayside, but you do allow yourself that focus. And multitasking is kind of a myth, and study after study is showing that now, even though, especially as moms, we pride ourselves in multitasking, it makes it harder and more overwhelming. So, focusing on one thing at a time really makes a huge difference. So, what that means is you take this strategy and you'd pick one thing from this presentation and you'd focus on that for the next couple of days and you'd really plan for it and figure out how that works in your life and you'd play with it. You'd have fun with it. And at the end of, 5 to 7 days, you'd assess it and you'd see if it worked. You'd see if that really worked in your life, whether you need to tweak it, whether it's something that it's just not for you, you'll have a better sense. And whether it's a planning thing or a food thing or, a mindset thing, you'll figure out how that works. Planning hack number 4 is move food forward. So in the email that you're getting this replay, will also put the link to the planning sheets that I shared on the live webinar last night. So in there is a move food forward sheet. There's also a meal planning sheet for when you want to sit down and meal plan. So always know what's next so that you're making it easier in advance. So, you don't have to fill out the sheet if that's not your thing. But if you have your weekly meal plan written somewhere, I would definitely recommend that. And then you just kind of look at it and you're like, all right, we're having beans in 2 days. I could soak those today. Or, tomorrow morning is going to be a bit hectic. What can I do tonight to get lunch ready? Even if it just means putting things on the counter. Okay? So it doesn't have to be big. It could be chopping an onion. It could just be putting the ingredients out. And as you're doing that, you're energetically moving towards the next meal or the meal in a couple days, and it really helps. So here's the thing. I I say write everything down, but if the writing down of this one feels too much, then look at it. But really at the beginning, the more you can write, the better. I know that this sheet, when you look at it, is like, really? I have to write all this down? I have to be this planning? But yes, if you write it down, you're more likely to do it. Actually, while I'm here, I'll tell you, because this is actually about moving forward. So there was a great study done in Ireland about it monitored a group of elderly people who all got, I think they all got a hip replacement. And they each got checked out of the hospital, probably at different times. Not all, there weren't 50 people getting hip replacements all at the same time. And the doctor told them all the same thing about how they needed to how much they needed to walk every day in order to get back full mobility. And to half of them, he gave a pen and a pad and said, write down what you're doing or what you need to do. And the half of the people who wrote down what they needed to do gained their mobility twice as fast, and some of them got even stronger than they were before their surgery, whereas the ones who didn't write it down, some of them never made it back. And so, one of the men, his wife worked and had to go to the bus stop. So, he would write down every morning at 3, go walk to pick up my wife from the bus stop. So it was something that pulled him forward. It was an intention that pulled him forward, and he tied his wife into it, who he loved, and he would make sure he walked there. And that doesn't mean it wasn't painful. It probably was very painful, but he wrote it down and he did it. So I'm not saying that this has to be painful, but I'm just saying that the writing down thing is big, and sometimes we really need to help ourselves to move forward. So planning hack number 5 is set a rhythm. And this, it looks for dinner like just assign a theme to each night. or assign some food you're going to have each night. So maybe there's a soup night. Maybe there's a night where you always have an extra vegetable. Maybe there's a night where you have one of my favorites is rice bowls. Build your own rice bowls or taco night. But create a structure. And the cool thing about structure is actually I find that it helps us to stretch. And this was something I learned as a designer actually, that the more I created structure around a page, the more I could stretch myself to do a better and simpler design. And it gives you the opportunity to go outside the rules, but within a structure so you can always get yourself back. Does that make sense? So I find with the structure around my meals, for example, with soup night, I am now making a more variety of soups than I knew before. When I first started, I would just always make the same one over and over again. But now I really do stretch myself, and it stretches my kids too. And know that repetition may be good, and repetition is great as you're changing habits. Repetition is like the best thing ever. So don't feel the need to have a different theme at every moment. Um, you could have the same breakfast every morning and the same lunch every day. Dinner might be an opportunity then to switch up. But some of the greatest minds in our world do that actually. They have the same things over and over again. And that is part of the secret to their success because they've freed up that brain power. Choosing what's for lunch may seem like a mundane activity, but it's not. It uses brain power because all the mundane activities we do, all those bits of sand, add up when we haven't thought through them. All right, so I just wanted to show you a couple examples of this rhythm. So porridge day is one of the things we do at breakfast, and I just want to show you that even being gluten-free and dairy-free, there's a lot of options. So there's different grains. You can use oats, quinoa, millet, buckwheat, corn, and then there's this whole slew of toppings you could put and switch around. So think of all the different fruits there are. Think of all the different dried fruits there are. We used to always put raisins, but then I tried cranberries and dried blueberries. There's tons of superfoods. So here you see that I've stirred in spirulina, which is a me thing. Don't worry, my kids are not into that. So don't take this personally, but this is a me thing. I love green in the morning. Helps me, sets me up for the day. Other superfoods that my kids do like on top would be hemp or chia. Um, and chia is actually a seed, so that brings us on to seeds and nuts. And natural sweeteners, there's you can switch between honey and maple syrup, or maybe the fruit itself sweetens it. So there's lots of options. Dip day is another one. This is packing kids' lunch. So this is kind of a complex version of it because I've put kale chips instead of crackers in it. But you might start off with just carrots, cucumber, and crackers, but know that as you repeat this thing over and over, it almost gives you and you permission to make variety within that dip, so maybe changing up the dip or changing up the vegetables, but it also gives your kids the safety net to be okay with that change. Whereas sometimes when we're not planning for change, we show up in a different way and it throws our kids off, and that's when we get picky eaters. So there's definitely picky eaters who have, you know, actual dislike of textures and things, but you will know that from their school and other things that they do that they're that sensitive. But a lot of times it's as simple as structure. Here's an example of rice bowl night, which I just alluded to, which is one of my favorites, just to show you how different it is. But in the upper left, I also wanted to show you one of the beauties of that evening is that I put out a bunch of bowls on the table and everybody serves themselves. And at the time of taking this picture, two of my kids still liked separating things out. So one liked her rice with her chickpeas, but didn't like the beans on top, and one liked the rice separate. And to me, it's all okay as long as we're eating it. And I'm a big mix up everything girl. Okay, so planning hack number 6 is fill your pantry monthly. So grocery shopping is something that's I hear a lot as being an overwhelm, a time suck. How do you do it all? I hate it. It's what prevents me from eating well. So just fill the pantry. Fill the pantry with those things that aren't the fresh produce. Try to do that monthly. So rice and quinoa and gluten-free pasta if you're gluten-free or regular pasta if you're not. Um, canned tomatoes. These are all things that I just keep in my pantry. Crackers, all the different kinds of flours that we bake with, oats, dried beans, some of the superfoods like raw cacao and chia and hemp. All these things do not need to be bought on a weekly or daily basis. They last for longer. So, actually, with nuts and dried fruits, I order those online, and sometimes I even do that quarterly. So, if you have a system at home for storing stuff and where to put it, then it makes this so easy. And so a lot of the beginning stuff before I said I go get dried fruits and nuts at online, I get at Costco. So my hubby actually we make a list and he doesn't mind that task and he'll go monthly and we have a whole list of things we get from there and then we don't really need to go back. And that's awesome because that is a time suck to go to Costco. So it's like you're saving money, you're doing it monthly, it's more efficient, and it gives you you have this structure that you're planning in, like we talked about in the rhythm, but then you also have these staples that are already there. So if you know, a day goes sideways, which was a comment someone made last night, and you can't do your plan, you always have those tomatoes and pasta. And, one of the things I think everybody should learn is just three signature dishes that you really can pull together. For me, I feel like that's gluten free pasta and pesto, a yummy ramen with lots of veggies in it, um, and we can pull together a pretty great salad. So, those things I just know I always have parts of them on hand. And so that they can, if it doesn't go as planned, which it doesn't, but that's the cool thing about having structure, you go with it, you work with it, and you make it work. But filling the pantry monthly is huge. So Costco is a source that we have here. You might have a different one where you live, but that's helpful. Definitely at your grocery store, you can get some of those things I've talked about, but I just find in bulk it's usually less expensive. Um, Dried beans, which are a big part of our diet, I do try to find a local source for that. Here, if you live anywhere near Boston, we have something called Farmers to You, and I order most of my dried beans from there. And when they don't have them, I also have an online resource, but I kind of stockpile them so I can always get them from there, and they last. I keep things in ball jars. Um, Tierra Farms is a website online. It's where I get a lot of dried fruit and nuts. And then Thrive Market is super fabulous, and that's a new service, or new-ish service, where you pay a member fee, not that much though, and then it's like Costco meets Whole Foods. So you buy the food, it's free shipping over $50, which it will be if you're doing monthly, and you can order those things like gluten-free crackers and gluten-free pasta and a lot of the superfoods like cacao and hemp, and it's all, you know, a fraction of the price of Whole Foods or a health food market. So, and I do actually love supporting my local health food market. So when there is a moment when I haven't planned well in a month or there's certain specialty things I want, I definitely go there. But right now as well, it's like we don't want to I don't want to sacrifice myself necessarily, even though I want to support all these things. At some level you also have to make it as healthy and easy as you can, right? Okay. Planning hack number 7 is plan for picky. So this is a big one because a lot of us have one child who doesn't like to eat everything. In fact, downright complains about some of it. So I think it's always important to remember that it takes 7 to 10 tries. Like most child psychologists can tell you this. There's a lot of studies behind it. But it takes 7 to 10 tries to like a food. And sort of body wise, our taste buds are still growing. We definitely start off liking those sweeter tastes, which is why babies like sweet potatoes and bananas and then you move into peas, which are still sweet, but a little bit more bitter, and then you move into the bitters. So our taste buds actually evolve. It's why a baby doesn't like hot sauce. Um, so 7 to 10 tries though is a lot, and I'm not talking about 7 to 10, spoons in a dinner. I'm talking about 7 to 10 times. And I don't know if you're like me, but I fully admit that after a tantrum, I'm just like, why would I do that to myself again? So, this is when we go back to our writing down trick because writing down makes a big difference. So, even just writing out, like, let's love broccoli at the top of a piece of paper and writing down the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and thinking of 7 ways that you'll fit it in when you'll do it. Maybe you have 3 dinner ideas and a lunch idea and a smoothie idea, and you just check as you go. And it doesn't all have to be about the food. That's the other thing. So, definitely, if you have a picky eater, like experiment with different ways to eat it, right? Like whether you've cooked it more, cooked it less, chopped it more, chopped it less, put it in a soup, put it on its own, whatever. But you can also play with like stuff around it. What happens if you include them in cooking one time? Will they like it more then? What happens if you really sit down and try to demonstrate how much you love that food? Does that help? So there's lots of ideas outside of just how you prep the food, but try to make a list of all those ways and really make a plan for how to make them happen over the course of a few weeks. Checking off as you go, not showing your child that you're doing this. Okay, this is something that probably you don't want to show them. Um, Unless they're older, of course, in which case it's a whole different thing and they can be doing this for themselves and doing discovery. Because this is something I would do, like trying to get a new healthy food into my life. Like, you know, just because, and that's the whole idea actually behind those weekly wellness experiments, is it does, even for us sometimes, take those 7 days to get something into practice. Does that make sense? So why would we ask more of our kids? All right, so that is planning for picky. So just make sure to document that, write that out. So those are the 7 hacks that I'm going to share for today so that you can just go off and do something and I'm not totally overwhelming you. And the third thing I just wanted to share today, which could be considered hack number 8, because this is something you could go off and do as well, is I just wanted to share with you a little bit about my morning routine. Because I feel like if you can master your morning, then you really can master the rest of the day. And a lot of times, especially as our kids are young, we wake up to a cry or, somebody else pittering down the hallway, and we sort of like lug ourselves out of bed. So if your child wakes up at 5, you might need to ask for support to make this happen because I don't necessarily think you need to wake up at 4. But one of my secrets was to wake up earlier than my kids and really get an hour in before anybody wakes up. And I have to admit that homeschooling, I've watched them sleep a little bit later and it's been awesome and it's really been helpful in this. So before that, I would either draw the boundary and just say, this is my time when the clock says it's 7:30, then you may talk to me. But I wanted to be able to be in my zone and really claim that time as my time. There was a time when I did this at night, actually, when they went to bed very early, but that sort of shifted where as the older got as the oldest got older that I was finding I wasn't as good at night. So I wake up at 6. I definitely set an alarm clock on certain days still, though I find myself more and more waking up naturally, which is awesome. I always come down because our heat isn't on and we live in New England and it's cold, and just warm up the water, stand by the stove, and then have a warm glass of water with lemon, which I love. I do a 10-minute meditation, which I was never a good meditator, but I've trying to get into this practice and I'm loving it. And my trick is that I have an app and I think it's called Insight Meditation, and it has a bunch of 10-minute meditations on it. So I just listen to that and I just try to calm my mind and really start the day from my center instead of from what everyone else wants. So instead of maybe from what you're emailing me, just kidding. No, but from what's coming in my email box, from what my kids want, from what even my spouse wants, just starting from a centered place of what I know I need on that day. Because as we know, as women, like days are different. Our cycles make our days different. And so this just really enables me to tune in, especially as that feels a little bit more pronounced right now. I do 15 minutes of exercise. I will share a link, but if you can also Google it, but and I feel like there's a lot of different solutions, and I've done a lot of them on a podcast, but the one I'm doing right now is a friend of mine, Di Manuel, has a 30-day free thing he does, and he sends out every morning a 15-minute CrossFit based exercise. So I find myself doing that a lot. And what I ended up doing was picking the four I liked best. Now I just know them and do them. Sometimes I'll do yoga. And sometimes, I'll find something else. But I always do something for 15 minutes. In the warmer weather, sometimes I'll actually walk out of the house and walk maybe for a little bit longer than 15 minutes. Um, but just committing to those 15 minutes. And somebody yesterday looked at me and was like, "You only exercise for 15 minutes?" And it's not about that. I do only tell myself that I need to exercise for 15 minutes because I know I can always commit to 15 minutes. There are many days when I do an hour or half hour, but there's many days when I would skip it entirely because it gets too busy or somebody's sick or somebody needs me, but I can always do 15 minutes, so that's what I commit to in the morning is 15 minutes. And usually it's around strength because I know I can be aerobic later in the day. Then after that, I get another warm drink, maybe another warm water with lemon, maybe an herbal tea. Sometimes I have a chai with almond milk. Right now I'm in a cleanse mode, so I'm not doing that. Um, and one of my favorite drinks, actually, here's a little recipe for you, is warm water with a little bit of apple cider vinegar, honey, and ginger, and a little bit of turmeric. That was given to me by my good friend Alicia, which I'm so grateful for because it's so warming and helpful. Love that one. And then, so when I'll sit down, I'll do 15 minutes of planning of my day. So, and sometimes if it's a Friday, maybe I'll do for the next week, but this is really just like getting my head around, what are those three work things I need to do in a day? Sometimes I'll journal in that time. What are we eating for the day? How is everyone, what's going on? Is there anything I need to like change or shift given how we're all waking up, like how everybody was the night before, or how I'm waking up, like if I'm feeling like I'm fighting something, or, you know, a child is fighting, whatever, or, somebody needs to do something different. So I just replan every day, even though I technically have a plan for every week, if that makes sense. I just write it all down again. So, you guys, I write down things every month, every week, and every day. I know that sounds crazy, but it is super helpful. It's like meditation, and it really makes things run smoother. Otherwise, I find that weeks go by and I'm like, what the hell happened? Okay, so then I go into some meal prep or work depending on like what time it is and how long I want the kids to sleep. So if I have something like right now, I'm recording this in that time after I did all those things. Um, and I haven't done meal prep yet, so I'll go do that while the kids are waking up. But I sort of switch those off depending on my need for the day. I actually did some yesterday, so I'm feeling okay today. Plus, we've kept today kind of low key, which I know that. So there will be time throughout the day. So but sometimes I just go in and I like power through making lunches and getting breakfast made and, moving dinner forward for 2 nights. So it just sort of, I do that depending on what happened in that planning session. And then at around 8 a.m., I see everybody. And at that point, I make a green smoothie. Now, some days when I know that everyone's gone to bed late and they might sleep in late and I'm going to be hungry, I actually make the green smoothie the night before. But that is the basic gist of my morning, and it changes everything. I feel so well taken care of by 8 a.m., and I used to just feel like what the hell is happening, and all of a sudden it was 9:30 and I hadn't even showered. So I didn't put showering in here, but I usually actually do that after the kids wake up. So I want you guys to create your own morning routine. And so here's what I think needs to happen to make that happen. You and I this I'm going to put this link. I'm going to write that down in the email that you're getting when you open this up. So on the left-hand side, you're going to be prompted to write down everything that you do in a morning. So write it all down. And this might mean playing detective for a couple days. Like, what are all those things that you do that you don't even know you do? Do you check your email? Do you check Facebook? Do you go do the laundry? Like, what is everything that you do? Are you helping this child 5 times and this child twice? Like, just notice everything that you need to do. Put down the things that you know you need to do, but maybe you aren't doing as well. So if you find you're always leaving the house without like brushing your teeth, write those kinds of things down too. So then once you have this master list, which might take you a couple days to make because you're playing detective, I want you to write down 3 things, or not write down, I want you to underline 3 things that you could do at another time. So that email, that wash, like what are those things that aren't critical to that first thing in the morning? How could you do those differently to get more space in the morning for yourself? Then I want you to go through and I want you to find 3 things that you could get help with. So, what are things that you're now doing for your kids that actually they could do? So, and or that you're not even doing for them, you're doing for your house that they could do. So, unloading the dishwasher is a great one. But also so is picking out your own clothes or getting yourself dressed. Like how can you empower your kids to move themselves forward in the morning so that someday they have this idyllic morning as well, right? Because we're just doing for ourselves what we want someday for our kids to be able to do for themselves. Remember that when you're feeling selfish. That's an important one. So, what are 3 things that were on that list on the left that you can reframe? And what do I mean by that? So, on the left hand side, you might have, pack 3 lunches, um, put out the trash, I don't know, whatever they are. But you can tell by when I just said those that I'm not so happy that I have to like pack 3 lunches every morning. And it might be that those are also things that you think about how somebody could help you with. But if they're things that you just inevitably have to do because they're those little stones that are going to lead you toward this healthier, happier life, maybe you just have to reframe them. So, why are you packing your kids' lunch? You're packing your child lunch because you're packing them a healthy meal that's going to enable them to concentrate better in school. And this is the best thing that you can do to help them with their ADD, if you have a child who has ADD, or this is the best thing you can do to prevent them getting sick, like whatever it is. But you're actually making their lunch as like a loving, caring act. So frame it that way. So it doesn't just become another task on your checklist. And this is where that writing thing really comes in handy. Writing these things down really helps you believe that this is why you're doing them because it's so easy for our mind to make up these stories of like, God, if I only had like someone in the house who would do this for me. But a lot of times it's as simple as how we tell ourselves this story. So the next thing is, what are 3 things that you can do in the morning that will deeply nourish you? So all the other things were kind of taking things off the list. Or taking them off the list in a heavy way in the reframe, but now we're adding 3 things. So hopefully we've made the space for that, both time wise and energetically. Um, and maybe in that weekly wellness experiment model, you write down the 3 things, but maybe you don't add them all in at once. You add them in one at a time. But think of 3 things that can deeply nourish you. So for me, it's that 10 minutes of meditation, that 15 minutes of exercise. It's really, there's more than 3 at this point. That the tea, the green smoothie, like all these things are deeply nourishing to me. And so is the meal prep actually at this point, because I really know what that does to my whole life. So that was definitely a reframe, but that's like the long picture. And so everything in that morning routine, everything here is deeply nourishing to me. Okay, so here's some other ideas for you. So I mentioned green smoothies, water with lemon. If hydration is an issue, maybe you fill water for the day, stretching, meditating, reading a book, going for a walk, making lunch, oil pulling and dry brushing. These are 2 you can Google. Um, Oil pulling is something I do quite frequently while I'm meal prepping, actually. Take a food supplement. So I'm not a big supplement person, but there's a couple that I strongly believe in. If you want to know about those, feel free to email me at any point, mia@plansimplemeals.com, and I'm happy to tell you all about what I know and what I take on those. Not that I know that much, but I know what I like, and this is what's worked for me. Um, Make an oatmeal bowl, shower, brush your teeth, blow dry your hair, do a salt scrub if you have extra time. That's a extra time one. Journal, hug a child. That takes 2 seconds, and if that's nurturing to you, it's quick. And so, part of writing these things down is you actually take in some of the nurturing things you might already be doing, but not acknowledging, not fully receiving. So that might be an example of that. Prep food, jump rope is another exercise you could do, hula hoop, plan your day, email a friend, find a new recipe, go shopping alone. So if in the morning you can figure out a way that the grocery store opens while if you have a spouse or a partner home, while they're home with the kids, you could actually go grocery shopping alone for the week. Yoga, make a shopping list, organize a drawer. Sometimes our homes, our spaces can feel chaotic, and just putting one drawer in order and getting rid of things that don't serve us anymore can help the whole process, especially if it's a drawer in the kitchen. Make a smoothie bowl, make a cup of warm tea, wake up earlier, so that's part of my morning ritual. Make juice. So, see, these are easy, simple things. Not that you're going to do all of these. I don't do all of these. And just to be clear, my morning that I shared here, this has been a 3-year project. And now I feel like this works. And I'm constantly figuring out what I can add, what I can subtract. I tried writing every morning, which I do sometimes in that 15 minutes of planning, but I find that's something that I do in bed now at night. So it really is just figuring out what fits into your life. So I want to leave you with a quote by a very smart woman way before her time. And this is Adele Davis, and she says, "We are indeed much more than what we eat, but what we eat can nevertheless help us to be much more than what we are." So I love that because I find that's very true in my life and why planning for eating well is so important to me. So a lot of people think that you can't have your cake and eat it too, but I actually believe you can. So this is one of my favorite ways to have cake, which is a cheesecake made out of cashews. I've never felt like I had to deprive myself to be healthy, but I have felt like I've had to get more organized. And I have to say that getting more organized around food has helped me get more organized in all aspects of my life and my thinking, um, and everything. And it's not always perfect every day by any way, shape, or form. Um, but it definitely is a process, and I can definitely feel it get better and better. And so I have created this course called Mealtime Mastery, which is all about the planning. And it is not live yet. It's going to go live on Wednesday, and it's going to open for a short window of time for a week, and then we're starting next week. And I'm calling it a beta for 2 reasons. It's the first time I've taught this body in this order, though it's very related to everything that's in the book and that I've been talking about for a long time, but there's a lot of new material. And literally, what we are going to do in it is we are going to spend 6 weeks, which I know sounds like a long time, but we are going to spend 6 weeks making this plan, this household plan, this master plan, this quote unquote business plan for the business of making healthy meals and living a healthy lifestyle in your house. And we are literally, the first 3 weeks, we are going to rebuild the day. We are going to start with the morning, and then we are going to move to the midday, and then we are going to do dinner time. And then we're going to look at these things that we can do on a more monthly basis. And then we're going to look on a weekly basis. And then we're going to look at the different sort of seasons and how the year changes. So it's a perfect time to dive into this because it's spring and eventually summer vacation is going to be on us. And so as you head into summer vacation, you are going to have this plan for what happens as it changes. Because so often what happens is it's like, all of a sudden the kids are out of school, there's more free time, and there's also this more abundance of food, and we just when we don't plan for that, we don't enjoy all this time, all the beautiful weather, the longer days. Um, it's more chaotic. So it's a wonderful time, I think, to do it. I'm actually looking forward to it too because I'm a mom and I have to transition from spring into summer myself. And then we're going to look at all the spaces in between. So, birthday parties and car rides and class things and little league and, what does this whole schedule look like? And throughout it, we're really going to be looking at our schedule and our homes and a lot of like, very much about systems. So by the end of it, you will have written down, because that's what's really important, um, all of this in a very structured way so that, and you'll have meal plans because we're going to create meal plans so that you can just pull from this binder, whether it be electronic or literally a binder, which I love paper. And we'll have some key things to print and put on your fridge. But you will have a plan. You will feel in more control of time, which is really what my wish is. Because when we feel a little bit more in control of time, and we all have the same amount of time in the day. Those people who eat well and run mega triathlons and have the same amount of time as us. And I know that sometimes we feel like, but we have kids and work and so much extra stuff. But the truth is that we can craft this amazing life of ours. And that is what we are going to do during these 6 weeks. So I'm super, super excited. And then you'll see on Wednesday, I've thrown in um, 3 bonuses to hopefully make this even more of like a no-brainer for you. So one is about food. It's literally online cooking classes. Another one is about the mindset piece. So it's going to be 21 days just diving into the mindset, which will be released after this 6 weeks. So that will be a great summer thing. Um, and then a 21-day cleanse, which is something that you can revisit often, as often as you need to. I'm in the middle of doing one myself right now as we're launching because I find if I can really zero in on my own food practices, even though I know you're thinking that I do this and I do this as a living, we all can get pulled off and on of this track, and just zeroing in on yourself for 21 days and really getting back into the practices you want and literally cleansing out your body and cleansing it of toxins, I find is super helpful. So I did it on purpose as I'm going into a new program so that I can be full energy as we're doing this. So as I said, I'm doing it as a beta because it is the first time I'm teaching this exact body of work, but also I've upgraded to a new learning platform, which technically should not be beta. It's better than anything I've ever done, but just in case, I wanted it to be there. But it's literally designed in a way where you can check off as you go, so you're really monitoring um, how you're going through the course, and the course is holding you accountable to getting through this material. But of course, you can go through at your own pace. So we're going to be very live for 6 weeks. But if someone already emailed and said they're going to be on a week of vacation, that's fine. There's there's no catching up. There's no being in the wrong place at the right time. You're exactly where you're meant to be. So if getting clear on your schedule is part of what you want next, then this is going to be awesome. If you're gone for a week, that's fine. You'll just catch up later. The course isn't going down or anywhere. And when you enroll in this, you'll also be able to go through it the next time I do it live. Um, so you'll have that opportunity to do it again as well, which will be in a next change of season. So that will be, that hopefully that will be helpful. Um, and of course you'll have access to it, in between, but live then. And we'll hop on a Q&A call once a week. And part of my reason for also making this a beta, and trying to make it reasonable and get the right group of people in, is that I also really want to understand during it where you're getting stuck, how I can make it better, how I can make it simpler. Because my goal is to make this process as simple and doable as possible so that it just makes every mom's life who taps into this easier and healthier and happier. So, that, my friends, is what I have for today. What I offered on the live webinar, and I will offer for those who signed up, because I know a lot of you emailed me and said you wanted to get it, but you couldn't do it on my time, is that if you've listened to this before Wednesday when the official go live email goes out and you say that you definitely want in, send me an email. And anyone who sends me an email and says yes will get a free coaching call with me before we go live or during the program to really personally guide you through those places that you get stuck. All right, so that's what I've got. Have a fabulous day. Bye.